Hello,
Yeah.
everybody. Damon Murdoch here, solicitor from Lawpath. Welcome to today's presentation. Today we're presenting with the Big Smoke. So I'll give you a little bit of background about the Big Smoke. They are a publication agency. So they have a lot of website content. So if you go to their website, you'll be able to see all their published articles. And they also specialize in essentially making people a key person of influence. So they work with SEO, digital content, web content, building thought leaders. So if you are a founder and you're looking to increase your profile, get more followers, publish books, anything like that, then this is the agency for you. So they're quite a dynamic company. They've been mentioned in Parliament in Australia. They have a lot of very interesting content writers, some leading thought leaders in the country. They work with a lot of the different marketing agencies around the country. And so if you're interested in building your profile, then today's presentation is all about how to create a dynamic business and increase your business's profile, your profile, and really get yourself to market. Pablo and Alexandra is here to talk on behalf of Big Smoke, and it's a little bit of a different structure today because normally in the videos that I'm in, I'm normally just dictating law to you, whereas today it's going to be an open discussion, and hopefully it'll be more of a blog-like presentation with some interesting topics, and we're looking forward to you guys dropping your Q&A into the Q&A, and in the chat you'll also see some links and some content details to get some really good offers that we have today. So I'll pass it over to Connor, and he can give a little bit of an intro to Lawpath.
Yeah, thanks, Damin. Just for anyone who is new to us at Lawpath, we're an Australian-based online digital legal accounting and tax advice platform. We're fortunate to have been operating for 10 years now, and we've worked with close to 500,000 small to medium businesses just like yours within that journey. We brought everything online. We have 500 legal documents available, all drafted by commercial lawyers, which you guys can grab. And these are also up to date with Australian legislations. They're fully customizable. They come with a contract builder, and then depending on your input, we'll actually adapt the contract, provide you with that legal floor for your business. So what we've done is we provide a really unique subscription service. We've got close to 15,000 business owners who actually use our essentials or advice plans or tax compliance, and we're all just about providing simple solutions to complex legal or accounting issues. So you can understand your legal position, simplify the legal jargon, and always be engaging in good practice. We're joined today by Damin, our principal lawyer at Lawpath. I don't know if you want to say a bit more to your expertise and background there, Damin.
I'm a Canadian, so we've got so the Big Smoke also is out of New York as well. So they've got American presence and an Australian presence. I'm the Canadian, so I'm a token North American here to help present today. I've been a lawyer in Australia for more than 15 years. I've run my own practice for over a decade. I practice in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria. I do a lot of litigation and court work. So I've been in almost every court in those states. And today we're going to be touching upon some marketing, advertising, AI law that's going to be applicable to your branding, marketing, promotions. We see a lot of misleading and deceptive conduct when it comes to testimonials and things like that. So we'll talk about some of the traps. And if you have any legal questions, you can ask me. And if you have any practical questions about improving your profile and getting you to market, then that's for Pablo and Alexandria today. And I'll interfere and interject where I think it's unlawful.
Thank you.
So maybe we'll jump straight in. And Pablo, Alex, you guys want to, take over from here?
Yeah, I'll just quickly introduce myself to everyone. So I'm the CEO of the Big Smoke, started it in 2013. It was initially a publication, so just a media outlet. We've had everyone write from us, from Paul McDermott to Anthony Albanese, and Pablo has been a really great radio host on Triple M for many years, more than 10 years. And the way we knew each other was we were actually on a show together for about 8 years. And so he recently joined the Big Smoke full-time, earlier this year, which has been a really fantastic thing for us. And he's working with us on creating really great profiles for our clients. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this topic, because one of the things that we really try to help people with is to avoid sending out press releases that nobody wants to read about, product updates that nobody really cares about, and finding a way to get cut through so that people actually care about your message.
And that's a good example, because if you look at your website, there was an article. Well, you made it to Parliament because you were able to get teenage kids to participate in schools, and they were talking about plastic bottles and plastic waste, and they were able to cut straight through the rubbish about the fact that there's plastic bottles all over the place, but get into the actual facts about how much oil, how many liters it takes of oil
Yeah.
to actually create a plastic bottle, how many years it actually takes to disintegrate, things like that. So those are the facts that cut through
Yes.
the rubbish and get to straight to the point. And that's the kind of content that you guys are creating.
I mean, a really good example is we had a 12-year-old girl write an article for us. She was being mentored by a professional journalist, and she wrote an article about, why don't my parents care that Google are tracking me? And
Yeah.
why don't we have those conversations? And I found that really interesting, because there's this whole lens about the next generation, technology, their parents. These are the conversations that are really fascinating. And I think also from a small business perspective, thinking about it from the lens of how do what we do impact people in their day-to-day lives, whether that's B2B or B2C. And so oftentimes you might think that what you're talking about is completely commercial, not realizing the application in everyday life that you should be talking about.
What's also interesting is you say how the 12-year-old girl says, well, why don't my parents care about Google tracking me? But then the real question here is for us today is, how do I actually get people to
Yes.
track me?
Yes.
And that's what you guys are all about, is getting people to follow you and making you a person of influence and lifting your profile.
100%. Yeah.
And Pablo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So as Alex mentioned, I began my journey with the Big Smoke at the start of this year. For the last 12 years, I've been on the other side of media, actually been in the media and hosting a breakfast show for Triple M for 10 plus years. And one of the sort of key projects that I'm doing now with the Big Smoke is like pulling those stories out of small business leaders and founders and placing them on podcasts, getting them speaking opportunities, positioning them as thought leaders with op-ed opportunities. So that's been my role. Obviously, having that background of what is interesting in the media has really helped unearth some of the stories that everyone's got great stories inside them, but it's how to make them attractive to the media that they get picked up.
Yeah, you see a lot of startups getting into Sunrise in the morning, and they do that every morning where they get a startup, and everybody's like, how do they get into Sunrise? How are they able to promote themselves on TV for free? And that's essentially what you guys do. You guys get them these speaking places to effectively get their product to market or get their business to market. Yeah. Well,
so let me click. There we go.
So, to your point around people getting on Sunrise if they have a startup, I mean, this is the thing. We've got a real opportunity, especially in Australia with small businesses and startups, to really own what they're doing and thinking about it from the lens of how do I not just sell my product or get my service out there, but actually how do I build trust? How do I think about the ethical element of my communication? And then also, how can I be agile in responding to how people are taking on our message? So I think that that's really exciting. I also think that, and we'll go into this a bit further in the webinar, but, the whole idea around Google reviews, what's authentic, commentary on LinkedIn. I mean, you probably would have seen a lot of people are, using LinkedIn and doing, little posts, and you can see it's completely from ChatGPT by all the icons, and it's got that pro forma, and it's about that authenticity and being personalized and letting people in while also, being able to leverage technology in a smart way. So there's a real opportunity. And most of our clients, when we speak to them, they usually think what's really interesting is this press release about our new product upgrade. But what's actually interesting to the market is their story, how they're solving problems. So it's just adjusting the lens of how you talk about your company.
I guess from a legal perspective, it's kind of like going to a boutique law firm versus going to a top tier law firm. You just want to move quickly, you want to get a quick answer. You go to a top tier law firm, they're probably going to draft you a letter of advice. They're going to charge you for that letter of advice, when at the end of the day, it's just a quick answer. And
Yes.
you're not necessarily planning on going to court tomorrow. What you want to do is just get a quick answer, get some guidance, move forward without having to pay that hefty fee for legal advice. And this is similar. You go to a big agency and they're going to, I think it was Commonwealth Bank. I think they paid like $2.4 million or something, like, someone can Google it, many years ago for their logo, because they
Yes.
went to the top tier, just to get, the yellow box, the yellow, white, and black box.
Mhm.
That's how much their logo costs. And Rain Horn also paid a ridiculous amount of money for their logo because they went to the top tier agencies and they worked on it. I was trying to figure out, how can you spend that much money on creating a logo? And it's literally people sitting at their desk thinking about it, looking at it. Whereas if you go to a small boutique company, they understand time, they understand money, and they know how to just get a result as fast as possible and quickly. So,
And I think it's also that middle ground, right? So you can go to a top tier branding company and spend millions of dollars on a logo, or you can go and spend $5 on a logo on a Fiverr type platform. But neither are usually that great for small businesses, because the Fiverr logos are very, templatey. Everybody knows it's just a cheap, or you could just choose a logo from a platform and edit it to have your name. Everybody can see that that's what it is. At the same time, it's unlikely that many people in this conversation, ourselves included, would be spending millions of dollars on a logo. So it's finding that opportunity to still earn that trust, and doing it in a way that's both authentic but also, tailored enough to make you stand out in market.
and I'm not a small business expert. I'm a lawyer, but generally speaking, if I look at logos, I would say that your logo is effectively your brand, and you
Yeah.
don't really have a brand until you get yourself to market. So it makes much more sense to put a lot more money into your promotions and advertising and marketing and getting yourself to the market than spending money on a logo.
Yeah, well, I think you should still spend some money on a logo, but I think also the logo has to not be what you lead with, right? As
Yeah.
you say, it's the brand. And I think the brand is more than just a logo or a name or colors. It's actually the essence of who you are as a business. It's your values. It's how you present yourself to market. It's how you want to impact your industry. And those are the things people often don't think about when they're actually creating a logo.
Yeah, true.
And if I can just talk from my point of view, one of the great benefits of TBS is that partnership with our clients. Like, I had recently a client that had booked a podcast, and this was the very first podcast they'd ever been on. So as you can imagine, if people in the audience are suddenly thrown up on this webinar, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be quite stressed out about it. And so it was a really simple fix for me to jump on a call with her and basically conduct a short 10-minute interview with her, like the podcast, and then pull apart those key stories for her to say, hey, focus on this. And then she went into the podcast feeling a lot more confident, a lot more settled, and she just absolutely knocked it out of the park. And that's a great thing that we can really offer, I think, at TBS.
And the other thing, just talking about podcasts, which is amazing, is that you have all these transcription services now that once you do a podcast, it automatically transcribes the
Yeah.
content of it into text. So when you're looking at SEO, it's excellent because it's capturing every word that you've spoke and capturing all the keywords for your marketing campaigns. So a video is just so much better for SEO than it is doing an article, for instance.
And also, to that point, the transcription of that audio or the video then can become a tweaked blog, 10 LinkedIn posts. It has a whole life cycle. So yeah, absolutely, it's really important. So I think the goals in approaching all of this has to be revenue growth, because that's the blood of the business, communication, and also reputation. And that's why all of these elements are impacted by these activities. A lot of times, people say that they don't see the return on investment from a PR perspective. They'll send a press release out and wonder why they're not selling products. It's an entire cycle, right? So it's important to understand all of those elements.
So one of the things that you were talking about is communication. So I get all these ads on Instagram and Facebook to just type up my advertisement, and then they're going to get a AI generated person to speak for me.
Mhm.
What do you think of that technology now, as opposed to you doing it personally versus just getting an AI generated person to do your talking for you?
I mean, I'm a big believer that AI generated content is really important. And I'm also a big believer that everybody can tell it's AI generated content, right? So to my point about the LinkedIn post, it's really easy to identify by the phraseology, the tone. I mean, it's the same with teachers. They're able to pick up really quickly whether a student has used ChatGPT for an essay because they know that it's not their tone, it's not how they speak. So I think that ChatGPT and AI technology and the tools that you're talking about is really fantastic from a brainstorming perspective, getting your thoughts in order, really trying to clarify what your message is. But then the onus is on you as a leader to edit that and personalize it in a way that will actually be authentic to the audience. So I think it's not one or the other. I think they can collaborate and coexist.
Yeah. Well, as lawyers, we love AI. It's a great way to find a quick case, find, the applicable law very fast, and then you can go and find the case and then read the case and so on.
Due diligence around it. Yeah, it's the copying and pasting of the content that gets people in trouble.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Well, we get some great letters back when we send a letter of demand to somebody saying, we're going to go to court, and then they quote all these cases, and it's like the perfect letter, and you just know, wow, that's just ChatGPT, and it's a good response. They'll be a bit surprised when we deny everything they say and see them in court.
Exactly. So this is just a snapshot of those goals aligned with the revenue growth and the reputation that I talked about. And then we can go to the next slide and we can really try to unpack where like people get that wrong. So I'll let Pablo take over this part because he's really good at refining the message.
Yeah, so this is obviously something that I've been working on since the start of this year with some of the founders and leaders that have come into the working with the Big Smoke. And as Alex sort of mentioned before, I've been a small business owner as well. I've owned 2 cafes in feels like a previous lifetime. But when you're in it, when you're in the trenches, you're so close to the action, you feel that everyone should know exactly what you're doing and everything you do is incredibly important. But often it's a poor press release going out to market with some of those things. You really do need to put that hat of the media on and say, are the media actually interested in this? So we really need to think from a media angle, is it that important? Because when you're really in it, it's hard to sort of zoom out sometimes. And what I find really key is overloading the message. So diluting the impact of a big announcement or a big milestone with too much information. I worked in radio for 12 years, and I don't want to say journalists are lazy, but they're incredibly overworked, right? So if you get an email that's just flooded full of information, it's just too much. They're just probably going to click away and go to the next thing and go to the next easy win. But if you can make it really concise, hey, this is a great angle specifically for your show. I know that you're interested in this. Couple of dot points, introduce the person. That's enough to sort of get them on the line. They don't need the full life story. But in saying that, with the story, you do need that brand narrative, right? It does need to be cohesive, and you need to have that emotional appeal and level there as well. And with the audience, it's just very key to hit those different platforms insightfully and on the right channel. So make sure that you're going to the right channel with the right message, and there as well about overloading data sets as well. You really want to be key to that.
I just want to also just mention that while it is not a great use of your time to be putting out releases or content that people don't really care about, it also can be a legal nightmare for you. So, for example, if you're putting out, stories that are false, claiming that there's testimonies that don't really exist, fake positive reviews, which I've seen a number of companies get all of their friends to do, 200 fake reviews. Those are the things that can really get you into trouble with the ACCC. And also, the other side of it is being a little bit too vague with your scopes of work. So, for example, not being clear on your inclusions, exclusions, your terms. That's where you are most likely to get into a bit of legal argy-bargy. I can't believe I just said argy-bargy, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's right. So, yeah, if you look at fake testimonials, so if you have a bunch of fake testimonials on your website and then people actually rely on those, they've seen them, and because of that, they trust your business and enter into a contract with you and then find out that what you promised isn't true, or what those testimonials say wasn't true, or that all those people that said all these great things don't really exist, then then that's misleading, deceptive conduct, and they'll probably be able to get out of the contract because you induced them based on false representations, which not only would get them out of the contract, but they can also sue for damages, being the waste of time of engaging that business for that product or service when they could have gone somewhere else. And so, yeah, it is an area that's being prosecuted by the ACCC, but it's really not even being prosecuted by the ACCC because the ACCC aren't going to necessarily go after every little small business until they get a complaint and it comes to their attention. It's more about customers who are having problems find out about these fake testimonials. That's the highlight of their defense, or that's the highlight of their case. When you try to recover the money from them, they're saying, well, we're not paying you because you lied to us. And if you try to get the money from us, we're going to raise this with the ACCC and we're going to file a defense and we're not paying you. So it creates a really good defense and it creates a really good out for someone that's supposed to be paying you because of your fake testimonials.
Yeah. So then how do we get it right? It's complicated and it's overwhelming. So going back to the AI content side of it, it's really about thinking around how do we use AI in an authentic way. We believe that it is all about being able to leverage the AI in a brand specific way for your company, but also in personalized content. So all of that is really important to use. And also then thinking, as we mentioned before, human oversight, copyright infringes. I saw that there was a comment in the webinar chat from somebody about usage of music on social media. All of those things are really important to have full understanding around, and also, of course, the ethical use and not copying everyone. I mean, how many times have you seen an ad that's just pretty much a repeat of 10 other people that you've seen? It's really about understanding that quality and that authenticity.
Well, the best example is watching the Super Bowl and seeing the American commercials. They're all very, very well done. They put so much time and money into making it just to get that attention, right? And that's amazing because it works. I can still remember, I think it was 20 years ago, Monster, which was in America, they're like the equivalent of Seek. And they paid $26 million. And I can still remember that they were the major sponsor of the Super Bowl about 20 years ago, just because of their advertisements 20 years ago in getting the job-seeking market in America back then.
Yeah, and then even like with the Super Bowl ads, for example, what everybody is always talking about is the Snoop Dogg, Martha Stewart ads, the J-Lo, Ben Affleck, Dunkin' Donut ads. I mean, the leverage of influencers and using that in a creative way is what gets that cut through.
True, but then you also have other ads that you've probably seen that you remember back in the day that were low budget. They were just funny, they got to the point.
100%. And you know what?
So,
even just a slide. I've seen ads on social media that are just a slide that says, this is an ad, this is what we do.
Yeah, well, I think it's Amy or one of the car budget companies, rental companies that said, we're the best number 2.
Yeah.
Because they know they're not number 1, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
we're very expensive.
I think it's Avis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, and that's just honest, truthful, unique. They're not trying to be number 1, they're number 2.
Yeah. And I think that really sort of follows on to this, as you said, is making offers that are too good to be true, right? That damage your reputation. So as you mentioned, being authentic with that, we are number 2, we own that space, and then not risking that over-promising where you can lose that loss of trust. You can really quickly erode the customer trust by doing that. And as we've mentioned before, with misleading claims, can lead to deceptive trading. And that negative word of mouth, we know that's the worst thing, right? Someone will say, oh, I had a terrible experience at a restaurant. You're probably never going to eat there because...
Well, they always say, one person who has a negative experience will tell 10, and someone who has a positive experience only tells 1. So something along those lines. I don't know the actual stats, but yeah, negative reviews are way, way worse than a positive one.
But also... one of the things that I've seen, and I see it a lot on Instagram ads, for example, by coaches, is they make these really crazy promises. Like, I was doing $10,000 a month and then I did $100 million in 2 years. It's stuff that is an anomaly. It's unlikely to happen for most businesses, and it really misrepresents the market, and it really misrepresents the opportunity with that coach or consultant. So it's really about not making guarantees that you can't back, and also not using, examples of businesses that were heavily VC funded or had, a really great edge that most businesses don't have. I think it needs to be a much fairer level playing ground, and I think that will really help businesses also consider their own offers and how they talk about what they do.
And most people know if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is not true.
Yeah.
So you'll just scare people away by an ad like that.
Yeah. And it's that long-term reputation and management, right? Like Lawpath, TBS, we want to be here for the long term. We're not here for just some short-term goals. So you really want to prioritize that long-term reputation. I'm sure all the other small business owners on the call today as well, they want that. They want that long-term generation and repetition,
And that's what you see online is all these people promising the world, and they're just in for a quick buck. Because they will eventually probably get sued and shut down, right? So they're in it for a quick buck. They get their money, they close down, whereas the slow and steady are the ones that are always the successful ones.
Well, to that point, I mean, I don't know if you've seen, when we talk about media and PR, I've seen a few ads where people say, do you want to be on the cover of Forbes? Do you want to be on the cover of AFR? $900 a month will get, and it's not likely.
Right.
Because the reality is, those publications need to see credibility and reputation before they'll even touch you. So that's a good, couple of years of building out your business before they'll even be interested. And that's where a lot of founders get it wrong as well.
That reminds me of years ago, they said, do you want to do a radio commercial? I said, oh, that's great, right? So I think the going rate then was about $30,000 for a radio campaign. But then I got approached by someone, said it's only $2,000. I said, oh, great. But it's 8 seconds. So to imagine how fast you have to speak to get an 8-second commercial in, you can barely say your own website or phone number in 8 seconds. So
or it's at 3 a.m.
They can speak really, really fast to get you in for those 8 seconds. Then you pay $2,000 for like 6 segments at like 1:30 in the afternoon when not that many people are listening.
Yeah, 100%. So look, it's all about being thoughtful in how you spend your money, but also realistic around the outcomes and also realistic about how the market sees you. We've had people come to us, they've had a business for 2 months and they're questioning why, Vogue doesn't want to feature them and, they don't understand it. So it's really about understanding that founders need to really focus on their profiles and sustainable success. So when we say focus on your profiles, I'm not saying have an awesome LinkedIn page. I'm saying actually do what you say you do and have evidence in the market, have a track record of success. And that's what is really important for that outcome in terms of your profile. So, if you want to, be paid to speak at conferences, you want to be a TED Talk speaker, you want to, be on the TV, there is a lifespan to go through to get to that point. And so that's why we talk about ethical leadership being about building profiles, because you're not trying to fast track something that you're not really doing. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit because I didn't know better at the time. But in 2014, I was approached by a PR person, and I didn't really know the space back then. And they told me that a very well-known publication, I'm not going to say who it was, wanted to feature me as one of the top 10 most successful entrepreneurs of the year in Australia. And I was like, that's amazing. That's so exciting. Absolutely. Meanwhile, they didn't check my revenue numbers. They didn't check my background or what I'd succeeded in the company. I just happened to be a founder and a woman, and they wanted to feature me. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in a 1-bedroom studio apartment at the time, eating tuna out of a can with a little tiny fridge because I couldn't afford a full fridge while being listed as a top entrepreneur. So, that experience taught me about the importance of authenticity and just being really focused on getting results as a company rather than worrying about that stuff.
Yeah, it all comes in time. So you will get Vogue interested in you if you get slowly picked up by all these other companies.
Exactly.
If all these other companies start picking you up and everybody's talking about your brand or your product or your service, then the big guys will eventually want you or buy you because you're their competitor. But it takes time to get to that level.
Yeah, 100%. So, transparent communication, don't overhype your guarantees, and I think that is actually a point of difference now because, everybody is reading Alex Homotzi, who I think is fantastic, but they're copying those formulas, they're copying those guarantees and those promises and not necessarily doing the work behind it to get to those results. And, we've seen some examples of this going really poorly for a lot of businesses like the Fire Island documentary and the Bored Ape NFT scandal. So I think it's really about not trying to pull the wool over people's eyes as to what you're doing and how fast-tracked you're trying to be, and being really authentic about what you're creating as a company and that process.
Yeah, The Fire Island, if people haven't seen it, incredible documentary on Netflix if you want to watch a complete train wreck for an hour and a half. But it really shows that it's absolute disaster of totally overpromising thing, attaching celebrities, influencers to something, but actually can't deliver anything, right? And that's what is really not what sells it and gets you respected in the marketplace. We want to be transparent, we want to be authentic, and have those realistic expectations so that you can have those stronger relationships long term.
Yeah, and that's another example. The ACCC prosecuted Health Engine, which was a website, and what they were doing is after every time someone got serviced, they asked them to do a review. So they did all these reviews, and then they just took the positive ones and posted them, and took the negatives and didn't post them. Which effectively is misleading and deceptive conduct, because you can mislead and deceive by omission. So if you don't disclose something, then that's where it becomes misleading, deceptive, or a false representation.
And a lot of experts have been coming out at the moment openly and publicly questioning some of the studies that have been around Ozempic, for example, saying there's too many positive studies about the benefits of this drug. Is that balance? So I think people are really questioning those research pieces. There's also been a lot of evidence that some academic journals are using AI and not checking it. There's been a lot of coverage around that. So yeah, it's 100% about, making sure that you're doing due diligence about what you're putting out there and not taking the easy route of just copying and pasting and not thinking about it. So that really goes into, talking about the rise of AI generated content. People are using it and they absolutely should be using it. But then of course, thinking about authenticity, thinking about transparency, and then copyright issues. So, really thinking about what you're putting out there and making sure that it doesn't infringe on copyright, because that will shut down your credibility so quickly. And we've seen that with ChatGPT content quite a lot.
Well, my favorite is the lawyer in New York. I guess he was probably under the pump a little bit. He was suing an airline. He just had to rush out some legal submissions, threw the legal submissions into the court. The other side said, I can't find any cases that you've referred to, please send them to me. He then tried to find those cases. He couldn't. And he realized that ChatGPT just made those cases up. They didn't exist. And they even quoted real judges. And so he got hit with a fine, and then he had to apologize to the real judges that were wrongfully quoted in fake cases that never existed. So you definitely have to be careful with ChatGPT.
So we just wanted to go through a few examples of people that we think are killing it when it comes to messaging out there. So the first one is someone I love, Christo, who has created a really fantastic brand that's all about, creative content, creative design and branding. Why he does really well is he does a lot of great content with interviews and advice for founders and creatives. And he's really honest. He talks about his process. He talks about the 20 years of building his company, but he constantly puts out content. And people really resonate with him because he's not overhyped. He's not, making crazy promises. He's really trying to help people build great businesses. And he also has created his own personalized brand, which I think is a really important thing for businesses to remember. Very few people want to follow a business account on Instagram, but they will follow a founder they find inspiring, a CEO they find interesting. They will follow people. So it's really important to think through why people are following you. The other person that I just wanted to reference after this slide is, I think it's Pablo, do you want to just go to the next slide? Yeah, Layla Homotzi. So I mentioned Alex Homotzi before, who most people may know of. But Layla, his partner, has created a really great podcast about operations. So she talks a lot about, how do you scale your team? How do you, introduce accountability in your team? How do you have tough conversations? And it's really not about selling anything. So she's not at the end saying, buy my product or download my ebook. It's just pure thought leadership content at its real root cause, which is all about just trying to help you become better. So I think that those are really important things. And the way she does it, the video content, is really clever as well.
And what I love about podcasts, like this has been my whole life for the last 10, 12 years, is how often does a brand or a company get to have a dedicated 1 hour one-on-one with someone? Like, when you really think about it, that person is in your ears literally for an hour talking to you, and it's a beautiful relationship that you can have with podcast listeners and the podcast host. You feel very intimate with it. It's a very intimate medium. Like, people will go for a walk, they're walking their kids and listen to a podcast, and you're totally absorbed in that person and their message. And it's a really soft sell, as you mentioned, Alex. Like, it's that soft thing of building trust, and people will keep coming back to podcasts as well. That they love it. People consuming podcasts is at an all-time high now. Like, we love to go for a walk, or we listen to them in the car, at the gym. I listen to them as I go to bed, fall asleep, and then have to rewind the next morning. What did I miss? It's become a real part of Australian lives, is listening to podcasts, and it's a very intimate relationship. So I really feel that leaders getting on podcasts is a great way to expand and really sell their message.
Yeah.
It also gives you a break from scrolling on your phone.
Yeah.
and also podcasts can be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, but you can also then cut it up into insights and reuse that on social media, and then that becomes non-time sensitive content that you can use and reuse. So a 1 hour interview that you've done could last for a year's worth of content. So it's also a smart way to atomize your content and get it out there. The other thing is insight marketing, but true insight marketing. We're not talking about insights that nobody really cares about. We're talking about actual insights into consumer behavior. We're talking about understanding what the market wants to hear about, what will be interesting, whether it's about your industry or the technology that you're involved in, whatever it could be. If you're thinking about it from the lens of what does the market need to understand about how their lives will change with my product or service, and then turning that around to being, these are the insights you need to know, rather than just being about selling yourself. So really thinking about expertise, thinking about that knowledge base that you probably have as a founder and CEO that led you to start the company, thinking about it and turning that around and creating bite-sized insights that people can consume and understand quickly, because quite frankly, they're probably not going to read your 2,000-word blog on your website, but they will read the tile that you posted on LinkedIn with 1 or 2 dot points. So it's just about being thoughtful around how people consume those insights as well.
And it is amazing. I've acted for a lot of startups that they pivot. They're doing one thing, and then they realize that the data that they're collecting is actually worth a lot more than what they're actually doing. And so they're able to use what's called de-identified data, where you remove all the personal information of it, and then you can break that data down into segments and actually understand what that data means. And then you become a thought leader, in the sense that you have all that data, and then you can sell that data. It's not personal information, it's just reporting on industry trends and things like that, which is very interesting. And that's what, big data is making a lot of money doing that, because it can predict the market before the market falls. It can predict the consumer trends before, the Reserve Bank comes out and tells you what's going to happen. It's all predictive data, which is really interesting. And my old colleague, he started a company in Washington, which was, can't remember the name of it, but they did polling for presidential elections and stuff like that. And everybody said Donald Trump was going to lose. And they were the only pollster that actually said Donald Trump's going to win, because they collected all the social media data. And they used all the open source data to look at the trends and the conversations and the chats. And they said, no, we think Donald Trump's going to win, because that's what the data is telling us. Rather than the phone calls and the surveys that were being done, they purely looked at the social media content.
And sometimes for a small business, you might not have access to a lot of data initially when you're first starting out. And I remember a story from Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank in the US. And she was in the real estate game for 30 years. And she told a story once about how Madonna was looking for an apartment in New York. So she created almost like a report on the type of apartments Madonna would be looking for, and put that out in the media. And people went crazy about it, because it was like, she had nothing to do with Madonna, but it was just identifying, in your industry, what people are interested in looking and twisting that in a way that is actually relevant for your market. And she used that as a way to build her own presence and her name in, it's smart, it's clever, but, and it got her cut through in New York, which was a tough game at the time. So social media, is a great way. And as I mentioned before, just being thoughtful around how you use social media. I see so many people, and, we've seen clients that have come to us who have, very inactive social media accounts because they're only posting once or twice every few months, really thinking about why they use socials, and also to do it in a way that doesn't feel overly branded, but really visually impressive. So, for example, not every post needs to have your huge logo on it. It needs to be interesting. It needs to be visually stunning. It needs to have images. It could be a reel that's authentic, and that's the stuff that the algorithms will pick up as well. So it's really just around being mindful of how you're presenting yourself on all of these platforms, as both the brand and as the individual. And then leadership advertising. So this is, you've probably seen, people like King Kong and ads like that where they talk about thought leadership and they boost it and they pay for advertising behind it. They use elements of the insight marketing we talked about. They might, boost their post that was about a podcast they were on. And that's another way to use pay-per-click advertising and social media to further drive traffic to your thought leadership content. And that's actually a really important part of all of this, because a lot of times people will do an article in a publication and then they'll be like, well, nothing came of it. And we'll always say, well, what did you do to really drive awareness around it? You should have put on your LinkedIn, you should have put in your email, you should put on your website, you should be cutting it up and reusing it. And that's the stuff that will actually get you to convert into having discussions with potential clients and leads, because you've actually, used that content in a way that could be interesting and put a bit of money behind it to get it in front of the right people. Unfortunately, the days of organic growth all the time is harder and harder to get traction through. So a budget is often needed as well as, for the thought leadership content.
Speaking engagement and this collaboration, this is something that we've done quite a bit at the Big Smoke and works really well, is pairing up thought leaders and then putting them together to discuss topics and their expertise. It also comes across as very authentic, and it's lo-fi as well. It's a great opportunity to sort of celebrate partnerships as well. And from that, as with podcasts as well, you can use quotes, you can snippet it up, and you form relationships with other people and like-minded people in the industry. This is something that I think Alex TBS does really well, is sort of marrying up thought leaders together, and the message together is stronger as well.
Yeah, 100%. And we've seen some really great thought leaders in Australia and their industries use LinkedIn, again, using, podcasts and video content and speaking engagements where they cut it up and then they do live LinkedIn videos and Instagram, lives and all of that. And it's really helpful in getting people to be interested in you and your insights without feeling like you're constantly pushing an advertorial message down their throats.
Mm-hmm. And it doubles your followers, because if you're working with someone else, then all of their followers are going to watch it, and then all of the other sides. So you're doubling your the amount of people you're going to see that are going to see it. So
yeah, and again, it all comes down to being thoughtful in both building great companies, but also being realistic about what it takes to get it out there, drive results. And so it's a tough economic climate at the moment. It's a tough, loud space online, and you've really got to think about how you're going to cut through.
All right. So did you want to tell us a little, before we jump to Lawpath, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you guys do and what you're offering? Connor, do we have a slide for Alex and Pablo? Oh, okay, there it is.
Yeah. So we just put something together for all Lawpath customers, people on the webinar, where you can come and talk to us about getting a digital audit. Do this because it is worthwhile having a better understanding around where you sit in the market. It doesn't necessarily mean an audit on your website. It also includes things like what happens when people Google you? How do they view you? You know, where could you be fitting in? Where are other people in your industry also discussing similar topics? And I think that that's a really important thing to know about, having that data before going into things like wanting to speak at conferences, wanting to be in the media, fixing your website, you know, driving more revenue. We can really help. So I would start with a no obligation digital audit, absolutely free. No one's going to, hassle you. But it is a good thing for you to arm yourself with. And then if you want to do something with us, which I hope you do, because we do great work, we would give 20% off on any packages at the Big Smoke for people who are part of this webinar. And yeah, I think it's worth, if nothing else, just really identifying where you could be in 6 to 12 months.
And so you guys help from the bottom up. You can help create the website. You can help create the content for the website. You can get the SEO going. You can get them in front of other people, podcasts, press releases, whatever it is, to start building it up from the bottom up.
Yeah, we're a full stack agency with a group of really great experts in different disciplines. And because of that, you can pick and choose where you want to sit and what is best for you at the time. So we would usually help our clients go, okay, you're here. So these are the activities they're going to move the dial. But in 6 months, we would move to that. And you get more of an understanding and more of a partnership. And oftentimes that's really helpful for companies who can't really afford full marketing teams.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody start putting in your Q&A if you have any for Alex and Pablo, but we'll go back to Connor, and Connor will just tell you about the promotion for Lawpath, and then we'll jump into any questions right after that.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That was actually also really interesting for me to listen to as well. Actually got me looking at some statistics on like reviews and testimonials and the impact that has on businesses. And it was really interesting because we, especially at Lawpath, we like to showcase our testimonials from businesses who have worked with us.
And that's another thing. We don't have our own testimonials. We use Trusted Pilot. So all of our testimonials are authentic. If they're negative, they're negative. If they're positive, they're positive. And what we have, like 17,000 or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how many reviews we have, but we have a lot. And those are actual testimonials. If they're negative, that we can't get rid of them. If they're positive, fantastic.
Yeah. We've got about 17,000 verified reviews from Bazaar. But then we've also got, I think it must be close to 30 to 40 video testimonials as well on our webpage and on our YouTube page. So I always like to prompt people to go check that out and actually hear it from the horse's mouth, check out the businesses who are using us, because often there's a lot of crossover there. People can see how we've helped people's businesses just like ours there, sorry. But towards the offer, as you guys can see, it's 20% off on our legal advice. So what that includes in a nutshell is all of our documentation, but you also have the added benefit of unlimited consultations of our legal team and unlimited on-call contract reviews. And if you guys do require any additional ad hoc work, anything very hands-on, you guys are also eligible for discounted fixed price quotes on that work. It also gets you access, since we were talking about it, to our AI system, which we worked on with collaboration with Amazon Web Services. So you guys got some awesome tools there to help build out that legal foundation, but also get a bit of peace of mind on any legal queries you might have. There's a whole host of and litany of topics we discuss, but some of the big ones are deployment and HR, which is we've had some changes legally there in the last couple of weeks. I believe there's going to be some changes in privacy law upcoming, which people can get advice on. Capital raising, business structuring, and intellectual property is a big one for people using that service. So if anyone would like to claim that, feel free to get in touch with me at the end of the webinar.
And how does someone get this audit done, Pablo, Alex?
So I believe an email is going to go out after this with our deck, and we'll have a link in there for people to be able to click on and fill in for the audit. So we really would love anyone who wants to get some insights to do it. Again, no obligation. And sometimes it's just also a good way for you to just, keep to account everybody in your own marketing team or your own company on where there's opportunity to improve.
And do they just reach out to Barry? So BARRY at thebigsmoke.com?
Yes.
Well,
yeah, but there'll be a link in the deck as well.
All right, great. Going back to Connor.
Yeah, so you can just hear on the screen here some of the other services. So there is also an essentials package, which is just purely our documentation, but without the added benefit of the lawyers. And then I don't know if there's on the next slide. You can also see our bundles packages. So we're a one-stop shop for businesses. It's not just your legal. We also provide accounting advice and tax compliance. And you guys can receive additional discounts if you bundle them up all together, having it all under one roof.